Hey there. Thanks for joining us. This is Trauma Informed, a weekly podcast about trauma, our nervous systems, and understanding how they fit together. My name is Russ. I'm a somatic life coach with MindBodySpirit LLC. And this week, we're going to talk about Cereset. Cereset is a modality that I used that was phenomenal and very integral in my healing process. And we're going to talk with Jubal Weiss. Jubal Weiss is a franchise owner of Cereset here in Colorado Springs, and he's going to explain everything to us. Let's get started. So here with me today is Jubal Weiss from the Heart to Heart Counseling Center and Cereset off Guard of the Gods. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so basically what Cereset is going to do, trauma is going to affect the brain in about two different ways, or both. On the right side, you have a fight or flight imbalance. So the fight or flight is going to be anxiousness, nervousness, agitation, overstimulated, go, 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 hard to turn your brain off at the end of the day. A lot of times people can say the circus is always going on and it's never turning off. If that happens for a long period of time due to prolonged or heightened trauma, it will actually flip over to the freeze state. Now, the freeze state is shut down, low energy, low mood, low arousal, lack of enthusiasm to things once enjoyed. So you have depression and anxiety. So the fight or flight is going to be the more anxiety. The freeze is going to be the more shut down depression. Now, when I say freeze, this is not actually just a do nothing trauma response. The freeze is the most volatile of the two. The freeze is going to be the last resort. So they actually did a pretty interesting study. They found that most people in prisons are actually not in a fight or flight response. It was quite a bit of them that were just all the way in the freeze response, aka the last resort. Think about a rattlesnake that's coiled up and it only has one option.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah, and actually people can have two responses going off at the same time. So you can have your high frequencies go to the right or to the left, and you can have your low frequencies go to the right or the left as well.
Now, when you say low frequencies, what is that?
So when someone has a low frequency imbalance, it can be indicating a couple different things. Low frequencies, low cognition. So low cognitive part of the brain, aka sleep, heart rate, and blood pressure. So
autonomic nervous system.
Exactly. Yeah. So still within the autonomic nervous system. When it's on the right side in low frequencies and it's affecting your sleep, chances are you're not going to be able to get to sleep or to stay asleep. So your brain is just constantly running. Same thing.
Yeah, when you laid in 14 voices.
Yep, exactly. You've been tired all day. It's funny, people that are usually tired all day will usually have their brain kick on at night, usually due to that low frequency imbalance. Now, that can happen if you're anywhere in the fight or flight. You're just going to be overstimulated in general. But if you're having some high blood pressure, and it can even be indicating past traumas, whereas if you have a high frequency imbalance, usually that's more current situation, things that are happening right now, the more present.
Okay. And then which you can also tell based on frequencies if it's more past trauma, childhood trauma.
Yeah, in general, it's not 100% positive all the time, but in generally speaking, and it can be, when I say in the past, it could have been a couple months ago to, even in our CEO's book, Lee Gerdes put out quite a bit ago, he actually had a child who they didn't know where all this disruptive behavior was coming from. Turns out when they did hypnosis on him, he actually had an extremely traumatic birth where he almost died. So since birth, he had an absolute freeze state induced all the way up. So his low frequencies, his lowest bar was always super imbalanced in pretty much every area of his brain.
Well, that makes sense too, because if you're talking about an infant, like their cognition, their cognitive abilities are pretty limited. I mean, they really are living in that autonomic nervous system.
100%. And so it was a surgical removal, a C-section. And that actually happened to me too. I was actually cord wrapped around my neck, losing, breath. So that's probably what happened to me.
So that brings up a question. Why did you get involved in Cereset? Why
so,
is it something that drew you?
Yeah, great question. So I've had my head knocked around quite a bit when I was a kid. I had 2 traumatic brain injuries, maybe even 3 or 4 by the time I was probably about 10 years old. I never was able to sleep very well. I was just always had sleep issues. I had developed not necessarily an addiction, but just drinking and smoking just to go to sleep, kind of turn off my brain to go to bed. A lot of people, when they are in that fight or flight response, they want to take depressants to go to sleep to balance out their brain. Whereas someone
like cannabis, sleeping pills,
alcohol, and so that kind of stuff, versus someone who's in a freeze response is going to want a stimulant to get going.
So that was when
Caffeine.
I was in my freeze response a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I was drinking coffee at 9:00 at night before going to bed.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't even know that, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
super interesting. Yeah, when the brain becomes imbalanced, and not only that, the interesting part is the brain always wants to find balance, even if it's in another person. So I actually work in a counseling center. We get a lot of marriage intensives that come out there. It's a world-renowned counseling center, heart-to-heart counseling center.
Heart-to-heart?
And so basically,
you guys do primarily relational?
so they do intensive counseling. A lot of time it'll be mostly, they have groups or, and a lot of it is intensive. My dad actually created the intensive program where you come in for about 5 days, you do marriage counseling, they got you working all day, and then see you later. But it's one of the most world-renowned, more intimacy and anorexia. That's actually the doctor that coined the phrase, and also sex addiction, that kind of thing.
For those of you who have not heard of intimacy anorexia, Dr. Doug Weiss, who is Jubal's father, actually coined that term, and a lot of the therapies and stuff that go around that
100%.
to help with relationship issues and stuff in marriages. He also does a lot with like betrayal trauma.
Yeah, exactly. And so the brain is going to experience trauma, whether it's a physical injury or whether it is, due to emotional trauma. Your brain is going to still only experience it in two ways: the fight or flight response or the freeze response.
All it knows is trauma. It doesn't know what the trauma is.
Right.
It just knows it's trauma.
Exactly. And if you have a really cool brain like mine, you can have both going off at the same time. So you can have a freeze response and then a fight or flight response going off.
Is that you kind of dipping back and forth?
So no. So basically my high frequencies were off to the freeze response. So my daily current cognitive energy was very low. And then when I tried to go to sleep at night, my low frequencies were directly to the fight or flight.
So your daily activities and just your daily experiences, you were experiencing in a freeze.
Lack of energy, lethargicism, kind of hard to get out of bed in the morning. I need 10 gallons of coffee just to get going. And then by the time I'm going to bed,
then that's when your
brain is kicking back on. Yeah, exactly. So, and you can have the opposite. So you can have so if you think of this like a fight or flight is having your foot on the gas, stuck on the gas. These are stuck stress responses, meaning that you're not physically capable of turning this off cognitively.
Right.
So when it's a stuck stress response, you're either stuck on the gas, the fight or flight, or you're stuck on the freeze, the brakes. Now, if you have both going on at the same time, you're going everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
Yeah, it's like holding down the
It's a
brake
burnout.
and hitting the gas on your car.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, that's usually the more compromising of the two responses. Technically,
So just out of curiosity, with
for sure.
patients coming in, do you find that they are more stuck in a freeze or more stuck in a fight or flight, or is it just kind of
So it's funny with the couples, we get a lot of couples that come in. Your brain is going to want to always find balance, even if it's in another person. So what that means is someone who's in that more anxious state, the fight or flight, has an anxious attachment style, and the person in the freeze is going to be the more depressive, intimacy, anorexic.
like avoid.
Yeah, avoidant, exactly. So, yep, and that's exactly what they are. So the avoidant and anxious attachment style. So it's just so funny that they always find each other, and it's
to
just
balance each other.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
And then they're just toxic for each other.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Cool. So what kind of success rate do you see with Cereset?
We have
Well,
personally, I like to go off statistics a little bit more. So we have 88% symptom alleviation rate, and we're pretty proud of that.
88% is huge.
Yeah, that's huge. And so that was done with a pretty recent study. If you go to cereset.com, there's a research tab, and you can go ahead and click on the research tab. There's also a find my location. Now, if you want to come to us specifically, we're at the Garden of the Gods location.
What's that address?
It's going to be 720 Elkton Drive, 80907. But there's locations all around the state. So I think we have about 60 locations right now. And I think about half of them opened up since, not half of them, maybe about a third of them opened since I've been there, about 4.5 years ago. So it is exploding right now. This is an all natural way to work on your brain. This is the cool part about it. This is not chemically treating your brain. This is non-invasive, non-stimulating. How it works is that you're actually hearing your own brainwave frequencies played for you in real time.
What does that mean?
So basically, whatever frequency your brain is putting out at that point.
Frequency, you're talking about specific brain waves?
Yeah, exactly. So it's going right back in a pair of headphones. So the brain is actually hearing its own frequency imbalances.
Okay.
So the most out of balance frequency, it's what's being played. Therefore, it's resonating on both sides instead of just one.
So you're taking the brain as a whole,
Yeah.
finding the specific imbalances and shining a spotlight on it.
On the temporal lobes is going to be the stress response, but we actually work on every single part of the brain. But you do get printouts of your brain. We take a baseline before you even get started of your frontal poles, which is your emotional fitness, and then your temporal poles, which is going to be your stress fitness.
I don't remember when I did my original, but I want to say that my emotional fitness score was like a 20.
Yeah, it was pretty low.
And then the highest is 100.
Yeah, the highest is 100. Never seen one.
The highest you've seen?
I've seen a 98, and this was a person who actually didn't do Cereset. They scored so high, and I asked my clients these questions. How do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10 on your energy, your mood, your sleep, your stress management, and your cognitive functioning? This person said 10 all the way through, and then when I looked at his brain,
You're like, dude,
it was 98 out of 100. I was like, bro, you're going to be wasting about $1,500. Yeah, you're going to be fine.
So that brings up a good question. I mean, I'm sure this may change in the future, but what does the program cost?
So it's actually going to change per location. So the bottom that we can charge is about $1,500 for 5 sessions.
And in 5 sessions, how does that is that all done like in a week or
yeah?
time?
So it can be done in a week. We tend to want to tailor this specifically to that person. Now, if you're not a local person and you're coming in from out of town, we'll work with you. However, if it is just you're in town, your local Cereset, they're going to give you a call. They're going to ask you a couple different questions. Those questions are going to range from, do you have any traumatic brain injuries? Do you have any current major ongoing stressors? Do you have any chronic long-term illness or disorders? Are you taking any supplements or medications? That kind of thing. And those all do have effects on the brain. And so when someone is more compromised, the more compromised you are, the slower we want to take it. And that's just going to be the best thing possible.
Is it just to give the brain an opportunity to become more plastic?
Yeah, so this actually
right?
does create neuroplasticity in the brain. This is one of the very few things that does. And Cereset, with the 88% symptom alleviation rate, is at the top grade, highest class of the neurofeedback realm.
Yeah, it sounds almost like in the same class as like psychedelic therapy.
Yeah, and so there's a couple. There was actually a study that came out. There's only like 3 or 4 things that can get you out of trauma response. One of them is more trauma. So just traumatizing your brain again to switch to the other side, basically.
That's probably not healthy.
Yeah, no, not healthy. But it can do it. It can get you out of there.
Of course.
And then the psychedelics, ketamine treatments or psilocybin, and if you want non-invasive, non-drug therapies, you can do neurofeedback, EMDR, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So when I did the original program with you, probably, what was that, back in November? So 7-8 months ago?
Yeah, I do think
something
so.
Like
Yeah.
that. While sitting in the chair listening, on like the 3rd or 4th session, I started getting these flashes of light with my eyes closed, almost like psychedelic type visuals. Yeah. Which I found really interesting because I think that might relate back to some of the neuroplasticity that was
totally
moving.
So everyone gets a different response. Me personally, it's funny because when I actually go to sleep, this happened more as a kid and less as an adult. When I go to sleep, I can get a yellow flash, and it kind of makes me jump a little bit. I call it getting hit by the yellow school bus. Now that only happens to me. So everyone has a totally different experience with Cereset.
Yeah, for me, it was more like a strobe light almost going off. Yeah, it's really interesting.
And I have people that sit in the chair, they feel nothing, but they come back for the results. I have people that hate sitting still because you do have to sit still, and so that's pretty common for people who are overstimulated to have a more difficult time sitting still, but they do it for the benefit of the results, which is, great. So even with, kids, sometimes that can be difficult. You can start actually at 4 years old. You can do this because of how non-invasive and non-stimulating this is.
Non-invasive, what does an appointment look like? What are you doing in the appointment?
Yeah. So basically non-invasive means we're not altering your brain. Your brain is actually working on itself. So when it hears your own frequency imbalances, it's going to start to resonate on both sides. We're not injecting any kind of frequencies. I know some neurofeedbacks kind of tend to do that.
Set a baseline for you.
Yeah, or they'll have you listen to a certain beat or a certain frequency or that kind of thing. What's cool with Cereset is you're hearing your own real-time frequencies, which are going to change all the time. Right. So you're actually getting a feedback loop constantly, a brain mirroring of your own brainwave activity, and it's able to fix itself. So we're physics before we're biology. So having an electrically balanced brain is going to be one of the best things for you.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jubal, I'm studying for my somatic coaching certification. I'm finishing up that now. And that is the basis for trauma-informed somatic coaching, is to work from the bottom up. Yeah. It's not to medicate it.
Right.
I just went in earlier this week for a Cereset session because I was kind of feeling a little stuck myself. Can you tell the audience a little bit about my session and how that went?
Totally. So the first time I saw Russ, completely fight or flight, all the way right side. So overstimulated, go, hard to turn your brain off, hard to sleep, that kind of thing. Now, by the end of his sessions, what we want to see towards the end of the sessions, we want to see it flip from one side to the other. In 3 weeks, it settles down into the middle. That is the case for most people. When, we got him to flip to the other side, when he came back, when we first started doing the 1 through 10 questions, he was on the lower scale, like 2s, 3s, 4s, that kind of thing. Mostly, I think we were focusing on sleep.
I definitely wasn't like your other client. I was nowhere near a 10.
Yeah, no, exactly. No. And no one is.
I was there for a reason.
I've seen 2 people that I've turned away and been like, you can try it, but yeah, that would be $1,500
sure,
just to, have a moderate increase. But most people that I see have PTSD of some kind, high anxiety, high depression, ADHD, that kind of thing. So, Russ wasn't sleeping at night at all, waking up feeling crappy. He's got a business to run. It was one of the biggest real estate pumps that we've probably ever had, just busy all the time. And so we did get him to flip to the other side. 3 weeks, settled down to the middle, boom, no problem. Now, the thing is, when he came back for the final time, or the most recent time, he had actually flipped to the left side.
What does that mean?
The left side is the freeze. So more shutdown, low energy, low mood. Every time that I've seen Russ, it's always been in the fight or flight every single time. So I did ask him, I said, has there been a change in medication? And he said, oh yeah, I just started taking the antidepressant.
Well, God, just recently got off of it.
Yeah,
but I was
for sure.
on it for a
and
while.
So that can last in your system for quite a bit, which is, extremely rare for someone. It's not, Russ is pretty standard fight or flight every single time I see him. So it almost never changes. It's so easy. Just got to aim at that right side.
And it does snap back right away.
And it snaps back pretty quick. He has pretty quick results. And so when we first did that, he was off to the freeze, and he was saying he had sleep issues. His one bar that was majorly out was the low frequency bar. And so when we see someone who has a low frequency imbalance, that's going to be indicating sleep issues.
So that session was on Tuesday. Today is Wednesday.
Correct.
That was yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And last night, Jubal, I slept incredibly. I was up at 6 a.m., jumping out of bed, ready to rock and roll, man.
Yeah, so that is the cool part. That's what people first notice, is that they wake up feeling rested.
Yeah.
And so when I actually did my first session back probably over 10 years ago, it was actually 2 sessions, 2 hours a day. So you're sitting in that chair for 4 hours, if you can imagine. Yeah, it's way shorter now. So Russ is like, thank God. But, so I have pretty standard ADHD. My teachers obviously love me very much. I was bouncing off the walls. I think I hold the record for detentions in my school, probably still to this day. Not even kidding.
That's only because I didn't go to that school.
Yeah, well, I don't know, man. I had, I think, like 40 at one point. So 40 times 30 minutes, that was quite a bit. But yeah, I was caught smoking and drinking, and my parents tried a lot of different things. When I first did this, I woke up the next day and I had energy. And that has never happened to me, not one time in my entire life. You're supposed to wake up feeling rested. That's kind of the whole point of sleep.
Right.
And so
if you wake up tired, you didn't do your job.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm sure every single person listening to this podcast probably doesn't wake up feeling rested. It's rare that I find anybody that does. Yeah. And so, that's pretty much the first signal that things are moving pretty good. You might not sleep better immediately. This can be a full 3-week process for most people. But usually the first noticeable effect is waking up having energy. Now, Russ has an immediate effect all the time. He sleeps good, feels better the next day, pretty instant. See you later. See you in a couple months.
I mean, it took a minute to get there at first, right?
Yeah, and I do think that
3 weeks to get there.
Yeah, the initial 3 weeks, it did take a little bit longer. But with the tune-ups coming up, your brain kind of gets a little bit used to Cereset. Now, I will say, just due to, here's a couple things that can affect this. If you have antidepressant use or even supplementation use, I have people, and I myself take a handful of supplements every single day. I take methylated vitamins.
Like an actual handful?
Yeah, it's probably, I probably got them down to like 6 or 7 at this point. I think it's like.
But these are dietary supplements?
Yeah, it's based off a genome. So I just have, it's for methylation patterns. So I have the MTHFR gene, the COMT. So it's, I take magnesium, zinc.
And those are mainly.
It's just vitamins and minerals.
Stuff, right?
Yeah, but when you take stuff like ashwagandha or an antidepressant, anti-anxiety, Xanax, trazodone, sleeping pills, this is actually messing with your brain chemistry already. So not even people that I know that are taking sleeping medication, they still wake up feeling like garbage, even though they slept good. So so how Cereset works is we're playing your own brainwave activity back to you in real time. What can change that is if you're already chemically treating the area.
That makes total sense.
If you're taking,
then you're hearing the treated area rather than the
100%. That's bang on. So when you have a freeze state, depression, and you're taking an antidepressant, you look really good. When you have an anti-anxiety, or you have a lot of anxiety and you're taking an anti-anxiety medication, your brain is going to look really good. Now that usually takes, so generally speaking, when you are taking a cocktail of those things quite a bit, it can lower the efficacy of Cereset, and I always like to make that very clear. Now, 70 to 80% of the clients are usually on medication.
Sure.
And they're,
unfortunately.
yeah, and they some of them want to stay on medication, some of them want to get off medication. So, talk to your Cereset technician, see what's best for you, that kind of thing, and see if you're a really good candidate for it. Some people still want to give it a try, that's fine. And then due to usually a medication cocktail, we're going to spread you out quite a bit.
Just to give it that chance to really
to settle down. Because
just
because you're not in the chair doesn't mean things aren't moving around. Sure. In fact, a lot of the times people get most of their benefits outside of the first
during that
session.
3 week
break.
And
I think that's what happened to you too the first time.
Yeah.
So and that usually is the case. Now, I always recommend trying Cereset, doing it. You can actually get a baseline for $99 depending on your location.
So they can just contact your office.
Yeah, they can contact the office. Do
you want to share the number for the Heart-to-Heart Center? So
it's going to be 719-644-5778. That's going to be the Cereset phone number. You can actually go ahead and shoot that a text if you like to, as well. So it is a smartphone. We have leveled up a little bit, so that's nice.
Cool. We'll try to include that number in the show notes.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. So who is the optimal candidate for Cereset?
So Cereset was created for PTSD and traumatic brain injury. Obviously, those two things are what's going to imbalance your brain the most.
Sure.
So if someone has PTSD, usually it's, high anxiety, high depression. We live in the #1 military city in the United States.
Yeah.
So, how many people do you know that are suffering for this? Unfortunately, this isn't going to be covered by insurance or the VA, anything like that. Getting FDA approved costs hundreds of millions of dollars. So
and unfortunately, the things that don't get FDA approved quickly are the things that we need the most.
Yeah, in fact, most of the FDA approval, they'll put as much poison in your food as possible, but God forbid something that actually helps. So honestly, as a candidate, if you have traumatic brain injury, PTSD, anxiety, depression, ADHD, you name it. If you need better energy, mood, sleep, stress management, or cognitive functioning, you should do Cereset, and it can all be benefited at the same time. And it's pretty intertwined, all of those things. If you're not sleeping good, you're not going to wake up feeling having energy. If you don't have energy, your mood's probably not going to be very good. If your mood's not very good, you're probably not going to handle stress all day. If you're not handling stress very well all day, your cognition's probably going to suffer pretty well. So that's the constant vicious cycle. So this is what's breaking that cycle. I would say if you're on medication, please let your Cereset technician know. You can still do Cereset. I would highly recommend doing it, but just depending on what you're taking, how much you're taking, what your goals are, staying on, getting off, they're going to be able to dial in a tailored specific program for you personally.
So after doing my session with you last year, or my sessions with you, I became kind of an evangelist. I was sending you people left 100%. And right. So my mother, hi mom, who lives in Florida with my stepdad, Henry, I didn't pay for them. I recommended that they go try it. So they tried it in Florida. And my mom has been dealing with an eating disorder for the last 50 years. Mm-hmm. Gone.
Wow.
Gone after the first session.
Did you hear, don't tell me, but did you hear her imbalances? Did she show you the chart?
She did, but I couldn't tell you what they were. Right. I wouldn't remember.
Oh, it's interesting. Yeah.
So she was also she's been on Prozac for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And she came off the Prozac as well. After
that's amazing,
session.
Russ.
So
I didn't know that.
It is incredible. That's incredible. My daughter's been through it. It was really helpful for her. She probably needs to get in for another one. Now, tell us about the tune-ups, because there are tune-ups, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, correct. So this, just like everything else, you can't take this pill one time and you're going to be perfectly invincible for the rest of your life.
That would be nice, though.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, nothing works like that. Just like medication, you kind of have to keep taking it for it to take effect. The good thing is this gets a lot cheaper. Now, there's a tune-up package. Personally, what we charge is $1,500. That's the lowest price we can charge. So it's $1,500 for the first 5 sessions and also $1,500 for a tune-up package. So that tune-up package is going to give you 10 sessions. So it's $150 a session. Price. Yeah. And if you're using it, this is what we recommend to start. This is very general. Your technician is going to tailor this towards you specifically. We recommend 1 to 2 sessions every 3 to 4 months. That could be totally different depending on who you are and the whole factors that I kind of listed.
I think I've been about 1 to 2 sessions every 4 to 6 months.
Yeah,
about
somewhere around there.
So yeah,
whenever I can get a hold of you.
Yeah, exactly. So those can last quite a while, and then you allow people to share them within the family for the tune-ups.
For sure. Yeah.
So each individual person needs their own package.
Correct. Yeah, but as soon as you go through the first 5 sessions, if your family will kind of allow that and help you burn through it a little bit.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, anything else that you'd like to add about it? I mean, you're like a plethora of information, man.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say that if you guys need help, please go to a trauma therapist. People like Russ, they can definitely help you quite a bit.
Just to be clear, I am not a therapist. I am a life coach.
Life coach. Yep. Or a therapist, whatever you need. And then also definitely recommend going to Cereset. There's a location near you. So
yeah. And if you are here in Colorado Springs, check out the Heart to Heart Counseling Center over off of Garden of the Gods, Elkton. Is it on Elkton?
Correct. Yeah.
And then the Cereset location there. They can help quite a bit. And it's been life-changing for me.
Yeah, for me
Jubal,
as well.
Thanks so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Love you, Russ.
Yeah, love you too, brother. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining us. So once again, this is Trauma Informed. If you are interested in doing Cereset or looking into it further, Jubal, one more time, do you mind sharing that phone number?
719-644-5778, 719-644-5778.
Awesome. And then if you are not in Colorado Springs, you can very quickly, very easily look up Cereset online. I'm sure if you were to do a Google search in your local area, it would show you franchises within your local area. And as always, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time.